Right, so shape editor underneath the sculpting tools here. Select this guy as the shape editor. It's pretty basic UI to begin with, but it can actually become quite sophisticated. So the first thing you do is you can hit the create blend shape. You can only have, well, in the new Maya you can have more than one blend shape per mesh, but I would still recommend that you only use one. Have you guys worked with blend shapes before? A little bit, tiny bit. Okay, so blend shapes are three different kinds of things. They are either direct blend shapes, where you have, if I go back here, I can duplicate my mesh. I can take it out of the hierarchy, and I can just isolate that, and then I can make his knees really fucked up, and then I can add that as a blend shape into this guy. So now I can say add target, or I can actually take this one, because now that on this mesh here, because I say create blend shape, you can see in this input there is a blend shape node. Bam. So if I take this object here and I select this one here and I say deform blend shape, underneath blend shape you say create, and then underneath this one you can say edit, and then blend shape here there's an add menu. It asks you which node you want to do. In this case I haven't renamed it yet, but you can see the corresponding is blend shape 1, so apply that. So you can see inside here it actually adds that body. So what I'd always recommend is that you rename these. Don't have them called body 001, so this one I'm going to call them messed up knees. And then I add that on. You can see my mesh is now activating to look like that, but the rig is still working, right? Just with messed up. Yeah, it's working. Just with messed up knees. But this is what you call a direct blend shape. It means that the deformation that I'm getting comes directly from a blend shape. Then there's something called a live blend shape, and the live blend shape is a little bit different, right? So if I dial this one off and I take this mesh here and I duplicate it, take that out, so I'll call this and then I'm going to write that as direct. Then I have this one, which I'm going to call live. We're going to call this other kind of blends. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to call this a live blend shape. And this is like the stuff that I'm writing here at the end is what you want to remember. Direct and live. So live blend shape means that this character can actually be moved wherever I want it. But on blend shapes, you should never, and write that down, never remove or freeze the geometry. It means that I can actually have my character wherever I want in space, moved like this, but deformation will still come in correctly. But if I delete or freeze the transformation, it means that I'm actually deleting all these points information in space. And that's basically what a blend shape does, right? So you can have all the translates and rotates, just never ever freeze them on blend shapes. So in this case I just want to have my blend standing here on the side. And then let's try and take something else. So let's try and take the elbow here, and let's try and do something like this. And I just want to select one side at a time. So I'm just going to take off that symmetry. Deselect this side, take this one here. Just going to take that elbow. Actually, I'm going to take something else because I want to use the elbow for the last example. So let's take this one here. So I'm just going to expand that a little bit. Then I'm going to say deform. Sorry, I really can't make up my mind here. I'm going to take his chest. He's got massive boobs. I'm going to do something like this, right? And I'm going to say deform. And I'm going to use what we call a cluster. Cluster control. I don't need to set any of these settings, so just set it back to reset. Boom. Have there. So you can see now I have a cluster. And it's actually moving around the chest, which is pretty cool. But I'm going to call this pec CLST cluster. And then with that selected, just all the formats inside of Maya have some kind of paint value. So if I right click on the mesh and I say paint, you can see there's actually my mesh here, but there's also this cluster, and that's my pec cluster. So on the tool settings, you can actually select that here. You can see on the cluster there's a pec here. So if I go here and I just say smooth and just hit flood 100 times, the most important thing to remember here is that I might just want to be able to, you know, select my cluster here and just be able to do something like this. You know, so when he's walking, his pec can really like bounce. the most important thing is that you can if you want to, but it's not as easy. But if I go in here and I say paint again, I'll show you why I selected that area. Because you can see it only goes to this area. Even if I try and say add and I set it to a value of 1, I can't paint out here. I can only paint where I did my selection. So when you want to influence an area, make sure that you select enough of the surrounding area that you have time to do fall off as well. And the fall off is usually a lot bigger than you think. So keep in mind that when you select an area, make it big. You can add more later on, but I don't want to go into how to add to deformers and all that stuff. So I'm just going to do the other side now quickly. So I think I started maybe with, shit, I can't remember. Maybe I started with this one. Let's try. Yeah, I think that's great. So let's deselect that one. This is the area. Create another pack here, so deform. Where is it? Cluster.
Seconds first.
There's so much stuff here. Thank you. Cool. Let's go in here, say paint. Cluster. And it's only called cluster weights right now, so I just want to rename that. So let's just call this right pack. Paint. Cluster. R. Just set that to smooth. Smooth 100 times. That's pretty good. Cool. So now we can move his boops. So what can we use this for, right? It's already connected to this one, so I'm just going to call this mpec ELND. And then I call all my geometry for geo. Then with this object here selected, I'm going to select my mesh here, not the messed up one. I just kind of want to delete that one because I don't really need it. That was just a direct blend shape. So I'm just going to delete this one. Oop. So I'm going to select that pec blend, and then I'm just going to say, add that in here, say deform. And then I'm going to say edit blend shape, add, select the blend shape that I want to target. So in this case, I'll probably go in and rename this one to be called body blend. So now I have that defined. So if I activate this one, nothing happens to my mesh, right? Because it's a live blend shape. It means that I'm going to create controllers on my mesh right now that will be direct connected into these two clusters. And then when my character is moving around, I can take those controllers and they will be moving, but the direct connection will go into these clusters over here and move it. And the deformation that the controller is doing by moving this one on this mesh will be coming back into the blend shape. Yeah. So I'm going to try and set that up quickly. So if we wrote a script not long ago that I didn't add to my shelf. So if I don't need any specific kind of thing, but I just need a kind of a joint here in the middle to get into my character here. So let's just get that in somewhat in the same area. And clusters are always working in on a creation. They always work on the regular world rotation translation. So you can see here it's oriented with Z forward, X to side, and Y up. So we're going to do the same thing for our controllers. So I have two joints here that are they the same position? Okay, no, this one needs to go one out, doesn't it? There. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Cool. So let's call this one for a joint. Select these two and just run the FK script, so we get these two nipple controllers. Looks funny. And then we go here, we isolate that. We don't really need the joints, right? Because we don't want to drive our mesh with the joint deformation. We want to join it, deform it with the clusters, so I can delete the joints. I just needed them to create these two controllers. Oh, something like that. Just give that up a bit. That's too much. Oh. Okay, let's build something like this. That's his armor. Nipple armor. Strange. Something like that. Cool. I promise I'm done there. Almost. Cool. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct connect these controllers, because they're set to world space, right, into these pegs here. So LPEG to LPEG controller to LPEG cluster. So if we go in here, if you guys haven't found it yet, I'm always showing you the hotkey way of doing things. So if you right-click controller, right-click here, you can get in the connection editor. You can also go to, I think, I so rarely use this stuff anymore. It's a general, you know better than I do. Connection editor, there you go. And then I just take the translate to translate and rotate to rotate. And the same thing for this guy, so right to right. Cool. I suppose I could use the scale as well, but you can see now this controller is actually controlling the peg movement. But we can still, and these two controllers are just going to go underneath my chest here. So now he can still move around, and we're not seeing the deformation, but only when he moves this controller. We move the controller around. There's some peg movement here as well. So that's what we call a live blend shape, yeah. The last thing that I want to show you guys in this blend shape lecture is the corrective shape, which is what I wanted to show you for the mouth corner. So I'm gonna just group this, and I'm gonna call this one for M blends group, and then I'm usually gonna group that again and just call it what. So I have all my blend shapes in one group, and I'm gonna say like this is the peg. Peg group. We can just call it peg group, I suppose. There we go. Yeah.
The live blend shape. Couldn't you just use a bone in the pegs?
I could, but then I would have to sit and skin paint nicely out on my pegs.
Okay.
Also, as soon as I start using squash and stretch, I would have to add those bones into that hierarchy as well and make sure that it's smoothed out. It's a lot easier for me to just use directs.
So it's something you use often?
Yeah, I use it all the time. Yeah. These. Pardon? I can't hear what you're saying.
Your pics, the colors.
Oh yeah. Jesus, that's no good. Oh wait, no. It's got nothing to do with Jesus. There we go. Awesome. Cool. Oh, sweet. So we have a blend group now where all our blend shapes are going to be living in. So this is basically how you add blend shapes to a character. But there is one last way, which is the latest way of doing blend shapes inside of Maya, and that's this shape editor, and it's revolutionary awesome because it actually just came in 16.5 and it's really, really nice. So usually you can see like you can see the blend shapes that you have here, right? I have all this extra movement that I kind of want to get rid of. The most important thing is that if you do these live blend shapes and all that stuff, when you parent out your character, it has to be back in neutral position, right? You can't have any kind of deformation, because then that deformation is going to exist inside the blend shape, and every time you activate the blend shape, that is going to be like in that blend shape. So if I have if I copy out my mesh and I blend shape and my fingers are bent, then and I just want to make an eye blink in that blend shape, every time I activate that eye blink, my fingers are going to bend. So make sure you go back into neutral position when you copy out your character. Yeah. Cool. So here with the body, what I'll do now is I'll try and put this into pose. And what I can do now is I can say, as soon as it's in kind of an extreme pose in this position, I can say add target. So I select this blend shape here and I say add target. And you can see immediately it's set to 1 value. So what we're trying to do now is that we dealt with a direct, we dealt with a live, and now we're going to do a corrective shape. And those are the 3 kind of blend shapes that you always want to know about. So this is going to be my L mouth or L lip corner corrective blend. And if you expand this a little bit, we can see the full name here. So you can see on creation, as soon as I start, it's always set to edit over here. That means that the blend shape is currently live. It means that the mesh that I'm seeing in on my screen right now is It is the mesh that I'm working on, but it's in an edit mode, which means that I cannot actually, I shouldn't actually do anything to it but modeling. If I do any kind of skin deformation, it's gonna mess up a little bit. So you can also see that it's set to 1 from the beginning, which means that I'm currently active. It's expecting me to tell it what it's supposed to look like in this mode. So right now what I can do is I can take this mesh here, and then I can just start to move these vertices around a little bit. So you can see a problem here. I don't know how much you know about the modeling tools yet, so I'm just going to assume very little. It's set to volume right here in the soft selection. If you set that to surface, it shouldn't pick the whole area except if the surface is leading to it. Do you understand that? Great. Did you know about that?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So right now I'm just going to try and push this backwards a little bit and select these and just start smoothing. What I can do with my tools here is that, sorry, I can't actually do that. What I can do is that I can move my, there's so many weird rules to this tool. I can move my vertices as much as I want, that's okay, but what I can't do is I can't use any history tools. So as you can see, I was just about to use the average vertice, but that's history, so I can't actually use that tool, which means that I can use the sculpting tool, which is also why it's underneath the sculpting menu. So let's just try and pick some sculpting here, and this tool is massive, so if I just decrease the size here a little bit, I could do that with the B as well. So same thing as with the skinning tool, hold down B, just to do something like that, to get that out a little bit. So just as with skin weights, you can spend a day making blend shapes. If you, maybe 10 days. It's just like, it's always like, it's only your creativity that sort of stops you, right? And also, this is also where I find rigging to be super fun, you know, because you get to be quite creative, you know. People think that you might not have like an artistic view because you became technical or something, but the cool thing is that you get to decide what the character actually looks like when it's moving. So for me, that's a really giving process, just as much as getting to model the whole character actually. Because for me that's just sort of, that's fun up until the ZBrush part, and then you just have to returbo. I'm not gonna go too much into blend shapes. I think what we're gonna do is that when we're done with our rig on the last day, I'm gonna give you some of the things that I usually think about when I make like a really neat facial rig, and then we can talk a little bit more just about theory, but I just want to show you like how I approach stuff instead, because I don't really have time to show you how to build every single blend shape super nice. But here, for instance, let's just try and, that looks a little bit extreme to me, but basically one of the things that I try to do is always keep in mind that I want a volume preserve, and usually, and it sounds weird, but a lot of this volume sort of get lost when you start seeing the render engines. If you try and render your character, you'll always feel like you should have pushed your stuff a little bit further than it already is, and I guarantee you're gonna think that when you see it, especially if you decide to render some of your rig characters. Are any of you planning on rigging in the future? A little bit. That was one. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
Rigging, yay! Have I frightened anybody not to become riggers? No, not too much. Okay, I don't hope so. Okay, let's say that I've just spent like a lot of time correcting the shape here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say hit the edit button here, and that actually just stores that information, so now you can see like this is sort of the correction that I've done, right? So how can I drive this now? Have you guys worked with set-driven keys? Nope. Set-driven keys are a way of setting keys that are not they're not visible for animators to see in the same way that a regular key is, but it's basically just a stored information from one value to another, so I can use this translate value here to drive this blend shape. So what I'll do is I'll just try and right click here and I'll say can I actually access set-driven key in here? Maybe? No, that's difficult. So that's fine. What I can do, maybe out here. Oh, I can. So if I right click in the actual value box here, I can just say set room key. It should give me a window here. And then I'm going to take, you have two areas in this window, one that's called driver and one that's called driven. So if I have my blend shape down here, which is my body blend, which is this one, is selected in here. And then what I have over here is all the attributes that are currently available to the body blend. So if I select that body blend, if I right click here and say select, it's just these attributes plus like a couple of extra attributes that we don't need, but it's basically just the deformation stack that we have in here, right? Then I select this controller, select the driver. So the controller is going to be the driver of this operation. So I'm going to say what is driving the operation. That's the X value. So I want to say that when X is hitting a value of 3, I want my blend shape to be on 1. And when it's on 0, I want my blend shape to not be activated, so put my blend shape to 0. So right now what I can do is I can select the controller and then translate X, and then I can select the body blend, and then on the body blend I can see that the lip corner corrective is here, so I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to select key, and you can see that gets a blue channel, now it's keyed. As you can see, it's a set driven key instead of a key because it's blue. Dark blue and light blue is going to be constraints, and the yellow one is the direct connections. So you will start to learn these colors slowly. So as soon as I take this controller here and I set it back to 0, you can see my blend shape is still activating, but the controller is in 0. So I select the controller now, and then I select the channel X again, and I go into the blend shape, and now I set this blend shape to 0. And then boom, 0 please. Select this channel here and then hit key. So now we probably just need to update for a second here. So you can see that that snaps back. So now when I take my mouth out, it's actually starting to only show. So now my blend shape is actually correcting that whole ugly deformation I had. And for some reason I'm not getting my... There we go. So that's sort of like introduction to blend shapes. You can see that there's a lot of stuff that's moving around because we didn't actually correct our weights before we did that. But for the ones of you, well, for those of you who don't want to watch the lecture that I'm going to do now about how I'm just going to sit and paint some weights on the mouth, you don't need to see that. You guys can go and work while I'm doing that. But if you want to see just me, like how I'm going to go approach it, you're welcome to stay up here. It's just skinning, so there's not going to be any new tricks or anything. But I would definitely do my skinning before I do this, because you can see like right now my corrective shape is actually like correcting everything that's over here as well. You know, it's moving too much of the mouth. How you should usually go on about these blend shapes is that first you make the mouth go out, then you try and push the mouth in, and then once you've done the out and in, you put your mouth back and then you set it back into the 0 position. Then you pull it upwards, then you make the corrective upwards, then you make a corrective downwards. And then after you've done those 4 correctives, so you have like an area of 4 correctives, you can start combining blend shapes as well, but let's talk about that another time. But I'm actually not sure why that is not moving. Oh, it is now. I don't know. It's supposed to move like that. Yeah, so I'm just going to clean up those weights. I'm going to delete this blend shape, but that's basically the 3 kinds of blend shapes. So yeah, direct, live, corrective. What you can do here, right, is that I'm driving this value with what I said keys, and you guys know from the previous, not last week, but previous week, that you had animation, so you know that when you have animation you have arcs, and sometimes you want those arcs to be completely linear. The problem with everything, every time you set a key in Maya, it will always try and assume that you're trying to make a spline, so it's gonna do the S-curve. It's the same thing with the keys here, so what I can do if I select this blend target here, blend shape, so I right click and say blend. And then I go into, oh that's nice, I can't see my animation menu here, so where's that? Time editor maybe? That's not what I want. I need my graph editor. Graph editor, cool. So you can see that from the beginning, right? If I select this this corner that we've decided to drive with our X channel is actually having this, which means that the deformation is not linear, right? It means that once I start, it's going to be slow in the beginning to activate the blend shape, and then when I finish, it's going to have an ease in, right? So that's not necessarily good. So what I want to do when I've done my set and keys, when I've done all of them, I'll just select all of them like this, drag them, and then just hit this one. Should make them linear, so now they're completely linear in movement. Yeah. That's the last thing you want to do to all your blend shapes when you do the correctives. Yeah.
Would it not be smarter to set it to linear, so every time you make a new key, it's gonna be linear?
Can I do that in set your keys?
It's just, I don't know. Is it in keys in general?
No, I don't think it's not the same.
Okay.
No, it's set your key and a key. We could try. I don't even know how to do that, but you can guide me and I can try and do another one. But we can talk about that, and then if we find out that that works, we can do another lecture. Yeah, because yeah. But if it doesn't work like that, all you do is just select the keys and hit the linear button, and it should be linear. Yeah. Cool. That's gonna be another blend shape.